Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, for participating in our veteran panel. So I'm going to start with each of you are going to get this question. I'm going to start with Joe. Please introduce yourself, your military service background, and your farming or ag business. Uh-oh. Joe, you're muted.
Thank you.
I know.
So my name is Joe Ricker. I retired from the Army in June of 2022. Just to give you a little bit of background on me and how I got here. So I took the Boots to Business class in about 2015, and I took some beekeeping classes. About 2017, I bought my property in Indiana. It's about 10 acres. I planted some trees, some apple trees, and I got some chickens. And I attended a local program for veterans in agriculture under Purdue called the Ag Vets program. Um, then in about July of 2019, they moved me to DC, and I had my house used by some veterans. Went into SkillBridge in 2021, which allowed me to learn a lot about agribility and give me some space to start in farming. And now I'm a consultant with agribility, but on the um, other side, I've been the featured farmer for the Indiana State Fair. I was the American Farm Bureau Federation veteran farmer last year, and I have about I would say about a couple $100,000 in grants a year through the USDA and now NIFA to help veterans get into farming. So besides that, I have two outstations, I would call them, with veterans that live on them that learn how to farm. I have people that help me on those farms to teach them and kind of do a little bit of everything. I run the farm as a nonprofit to help veterans get into farming. So that's kind of my thing with both Addie's Orchard and my nonprofit Veterans in Farming. Is that enough, Connie?
Yes, I think so for right now. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Graham. Was in the Royal Australian Air Force for nearly 16 years as an avionics engineer. So a little different to farming. But I retired in 2019 and moved the whole family out here to Idaho. Wife had a good job opportunity. She's a crop advisor by trade. I grew up in a coastal country town, so I had farms and beaches. It was a great mix. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time predominantly in the fighter jet world, in the military, specializing in intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and tactical data link systems. So a lot of all the spook stuff is where I spent a lot of time. So windowless rooms. So it's nice to get something that gets me outside. We've had our farm up and going. We started in a subdivision because that's all we could afford at the time. So I turned the backyard into a thriving flower garden for my wife to start selling flowers and start ticking some of those USDA boxes to enable us to get grants in the future. We were able to get a couple of leases from different friends and family that had small plots that just weren't suitable for their farm. So we had currently we've got about 14 acres registered with the USDA. Our current property has two of those in pasture, and then we've got some livestock that's predominantly utilized for 4-H projects. My daughter shows pigs, so we started there, and then try and help as many kids get into farming. There's a lot of people stuck in subdivisions, so I never had 4-H available as a kid, but my wife grew up in 4-H and FFA and got to see a little bit of it and fell in love with the whole system that they've got going. So with us having some room, we're now going to be leasing out pens super cheap, but just enough to have people have some skin in the game and help offset some of our costs, but lease those out to 4-H kids that don't have land available to run their projects. And then We ran trial crops this year for our U-Pick flower and vegetable farm, so and that will go into full swing in spring next year. We've got 2 acres to put into beds, so we've been buying equipment, renting equipment, just to try and get by. We don't want to get into debt over it. Mortgage on the house is enough. So, but that's kind of where we're at. We got farm stands. We do wholesale, both flowers and vegetables to local restaurants, local florists, places like that. Getting some custom orders coming in this year after seeing that they can get something local. A lot of the businesses around here do really want to source locally. So we're leaning into that and the agri, as well as agri-tourism side. Trying to get as much bang for buck out of our property as possible. So multiple income streams, renting out the field to photographers as well. So not only do we have to have a functional farm for growing crops, but we've also got to have the aesthetics too, which kind of tweaks the way that we actually grow a little. So it's a bit of a working out the compromise there between the agritourism side of things and production farming. So it's small scale now, but this farm is going to be a stepping stone for us. That's our plan, is about 10 years to be able to turn around and get more land and scale up from there.
Ted, would you introduce yourself, your military service background, and your farming and ag business?
Yeah, my name is Ted Kvark. Our 7-acre farm is in Emmett, a far way away from growing up in Chicago, very urban area. But even as a young kid, I was always raising animals or had little garden stuff and that too. I mean, I remember at 16 when I had my license, I'd go out camping by myself in an old pup tent that I got at the military sales store, and I'd shoot a squirrel and clean it and eat it right there over a campfire and stuff too. So some of those things that we do that now as a homesteader I'm doing on a regular basis. So since this is with the Farmer Veteran Coalition, I sometimes I could talk a lot of different subjects, just different experience and stuff too in my life, but trying to relate it back to the whole veteran and where's that military stuff kind of place in. And for me, it's just a lot of it's the experience, like different experiences we had. And so in the Air Force, I was in the early 90s. My job was loading airplanes. I worked on the flight line. I was first stationed in Germany, working out there loading Patriot missiles and stuff during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. We'd work a lot of different things, medevac flights and all kinds of stuff. Bringing troops back in, always dealing with issues directly related to that type of thing. And then a lot of it, because a lot of what those things we experience are what sometimes determine what we do later in life. We take all those things and kind of use that. And I was thinking about that too when Anna was saying about the veteran farmer passion that goes on. Well, guess what? Now I'm 54, but when I was in my early 20s, and then I was ripped from my family and deployed. At my last deployment, I just shared this at a recent farm tour too, but Operation Provide Hope was going on for some Somalian famine victims. And I spent some months in Kenya supporting that and then going through Somalia. And, if you remember back then, that was to support the Somalian famine victims because the hostiles, the pirates, were stealing all the stuff and keeping the humanitarian aid from getting into the people that needed it and stuff. So U.S. intervened with a bunch of others. And so that kind of came about then during Operation Gothic Serpent when the Battle of Mogadishu took place, better known as the whole Black Hawk Down incident and stuff. And so I remember being in there and just, of course, we had a military operation support, the things that we're doing with being busy with stuff. But still, as we go by the gate, just seeing some of these Somalian famine victims just begging for anything, and how skinny someone can be and still be alive is just something that will etch in your mind. So a lot of times with veteran stuff, we talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I don't know if we always have to have PTSD, like a disorder or problem from it, but But sometimes, you know, have you ever had a very stressful situation? You know, I mean, I could think of a car wreck I had one time. Some lady ran a stop sign, a T-boner. That was traumatic. That was a traumatic situation. Or even my brother who lives with me now, you know, when I woke up when I was 17, he was in a coma. I had to get his airway open, keep him breathing and stuff till paramedics got there. Or even another traumatic situation. My son, when he was 4 years old, had an accident, and I'm having to do CPR on my own kid. Now, praise God, he's 21 and doing just perfectly fine. I have the traumatic memories from that, and it helps drive me to be a different person, hopefully a better person. So I continue with learning things like life-saving techniques and ways to look for others and help others and stuff too. So some of that's what's driven me, I believe, looking back at my life now. Back then, in 1993, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy being sent to Africa and not knowing I was there. I wasn't happy getting service-connected injuries and illnesses and stuff that you have to deal with for a lifetime. But that's what you take and it drives you. And you can let that run you down, or you can take that to be your energy that's going to push you. And so that's, I believe, now looking back at stuff, something that's pushed me further and further into farming and ranching. And I guess I would say it more as homesteading. So we bought our farm in 2016, and right away, 2017, I started as a business operation too. So we have primarily a market garden. So we're growing different types of crops over the season and selling those. We have the ranch side. Primarily, I raise sheep, but we also have meat rabbits, and we'll raise out hogs and meat chickens and different things come and go sometimes, as well as we have a fruit tree orchard. And so there's just a myriad of things. I also have seed production part to my operation, which what it does is I don't have everything in one area, so it changes things up a little bit. And then I also do things like agritourism type things, farm tours, probably starting to get more into that type of thing, where we're doing on-site training, hands-on type of stuff, classes. I would love to be able to put a structure on my property that would have a commercial kitchen and a nice multi-use space where we could host private dinners and host classrooms and tours and stuff. We'll see what happens. And so I had a lot of little experience with different properties I lived at. We raised different animals at different times, had different gardens and stuff. And part of when we moved here was specific. We had an intention to say, okay, we have a short-term, midterm, long-term plan to provide for our needs. And so that's kind of the homesteading aspect. But of course, I'm not retired or anything, so I still need to provide income. And so that's where there's that business end, but we're providing most of our needs. Other than dairy, we pretty much could provide everything we need. And so starting in 2020 is when I saw that there was a Harvest Heroes class. And I thought, hey, cool, a veteran thing. I love that kind of stuff. And I took that. And I really liked it. And of course, 2020, COVID year, a lot of things were shut down, but we kept that thing going and had to start learning things like Zoom and stuff. And then from there, I just kept taking it. Especially with Ariel and Connie, learning more stuff, learning about cultivating success, learning about these other classes and training. And I just kept trying to take stuff. And I like to take stuff, and then I like to try to make sure to share it with other people too, as I can. And then through those connections and other stuff, it just kept building. I went to the first and only Arm to Farm class held in Idaho, veteran beginning farming program that was up in Sandpoint, Idaho, which was really, really, really beneficial for me. It's an application process, so they have funding for veterans, but of course they're wanting to invest in someone that's going to take that information and use it. And so I was able to take that and implement a lot of stuff. And then I actually went to the second class last year. The Arm to Farm 2.0 was held in Washington, in Spokane, and learned even more there too. And in the midst, just a bunch of little things in between and stuff. And so anything I can kind of learn is very helpful for me as far as on my farm and for some of the stuff that we're trying to implement. And then I also do some stuff too with the animals too. So like the sheep, like when I have lambs in the early spring, I'll hold like a little what I call baby lamb encounter, which is kind of redundant, but for most of the city folk coming to to Emmett, it's like, oh, they can play with a little lamb, but it's a great opportunity to show someone up close and personal an animal. And a lot of times we're able to do stuff. We get a lot of special needs folks out and stuff. That was difficult being deployed. But then I kind of turned that around. Luckily, instead of getting shelled up in something, I've gone back to other countries. Been to Mexico, I've been to Dominican Republic, Haiti of all places, and Zambia, Kenya, Ethiopia, doing a lot of feeding programs or what we would call like small scale farm type of thing. So something really small. So someone has just a little shack somewhere, but how can you do things in a way that can benefit you and hopefully your neighbor and stuff too. So, so our farm Sunshine Acres is in Emmett and 7 acres, and our little self-serve farm stand is usually pretty busy. This year we added on a online sales platform that kind of helped with some things too. So we're just trying to grow, but we're kind of at I guess at a plateau area for us. We're just trying to kind of maintain the customers we have and reduce workload as much as possible.
Great stuff. Aaron.
Yes.
Hi, this is Erin Stone. I'm going to have you introduce yourself and your military background and your farming and ag related type business.
Okay. I was in the Navy. I was a nuclear electronics technician, so I did instrumentation control on aircraft carrier, and I taught students as well. So I did that from 06 to 2014, and I have a lot of experience back then. And then I worked at Microsoft for 2 years, and my last role was working at an ATM company, so cash machines, and did managed services operates there. And then COVID hit, and my wife and I decided to pivot to agriculture. We don't have a farm yet, but we are working on hydroponics and systems to be able to help people grow food indoors year round, and other automation controls for agriculture. And so we started a company to do that. And I'm finishing up my molecular biology degree at Boise State. I get that December this year, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, go Broncos. Yeah, I like farming. It's something I've been interested in. I grew up more in a city environment, so I wasn't, like you said, you were from Chicago. I actually just moved. That was where my last job was. So I just moved here from Chicago. Yeah, me either. We picked this place on purpose. And yeah, so it's gonna be exciting. Next chapter.
Well, we're glad to have you. All right. The second question, I'm going to start with Joe. What challenges have you experienced getting started?
So, that's a good question. By the way, I grew up in Chicago too, if that helps anybody. I think to start, the biggest challenge is like I have an orchard, and an orchard doesn't produce for, maybe 3 to 5 years, depending what size tree you get. So, initially, diversification to make sure that, I had stuff out there for veterans to see and veterans to engage in. And then, waiting for the apple trees to grow. But I started early enough. I still active duty. So I still had, a job, income, and insurance. So I think just the planning phase and making sure that the plan was solid was probably the biggest challenge, and I think as military members, we all know, you make a plan and you have to have a strong plan because there's a good chance first contact's gonna change your plan. So I would say planning was probably the biggest challenge, and then waiting it out and making sure everything started okay.
Okay, thank you. Rob, what has been your challenges getting started?
The cost of buying into land is a big one. So yeah, like Joe, I've still got a day job that takes up a lot of time. So trying to balance having an income source to be able to fund everything, and then still have some energy at the end of the day to still get out in the field or jump on the tractor. Even just spraying some weeds can be a huge challenge. So yeah, finding capital is like always the biggest challenge. Is like around here, that's having to pay developer prices for farmland. Like that just it doesn't add up. It never maths. So then coming up with a solid plan and preparing for those contingencies and pivoting. Like we spent 2 years planning before we even started in a subdivision backyard. And having to research, okay, what crops would make sense to get the best ROI out of each land. Talking with other farmers around the area. A mentor of ours is like, you got to get into herbs. Like you don't do a single herb. Like how many nuts to go into herbs? And yeah, when you're working with farmers, most of them are not the most talkative guys on the planet. So I fit in well. But trying to figure out, what farming you actually want to do as well. Do you want to be more ranching? Do you want to be homesteading? Do you want to do row crops? Do you want to be more on the agri-tourism side? There's so many different facets of agriculture that you've kind of got to figure out what you want to do. And we started with what my wife loves doing, and that's flowers and plants. And like, okay, well, everything that you're picking won't pay the bills. So how can we like pivot from that? And so we've looked at things that, like lavender is a good return on investment, but it's similar to your fruit trees where, you've got 3 to 5 years before it's turning around and producing enough to make money. So what are you going to do in that interim? And is that going to be a long-term goal, or are you going to continue to diversify? I consult with a lot of different farms in my job doing HR consulting and business consulting, and there's many farmers out there that are worried if they're even going to be farming next year due to commodity prices. So yeah, that kind of scares the pants off you as well when you're throwing all this money and time into something and you're watching people that have done it their whole life wonder whether they can make it next year. So I always say farmers probably make the best gamblers at a casino because they do that on the daily. Yeah. It's educated risk, and I think that's what the military sets us up pretty well for to be successful. Generally we're pioneers of technology, and it's jump in and figure it out. We're putting you on a plane with some gear, and you land somewhere, and okay, well, here's the mission. We've got no plan on it. Figure it out, and you've got to be able to pivot, think quickly, and execute. So that's where I think being a veteran is beneficial to entering farming. So it's probably a pro out of all the negative.
Yeah. Ted, what has been your biggest challenges getting started?
Well, my operation's a little different. I started and it was full-time, just all in. And, it's tough. It's, if you're not ready to do a bunch of 14-hour days and work every day and work in the heat, and work when the bugs are there, work when it's freezing cold, and do all those things, you can have a hard time. It's like you were saying, you have to kind of have a mindset where you're able to work around everything. Like you have to be, you might say like I'm a homestead or something, so I have to know some farming, I have to know some seed production, I have to know some with the ranching with animals, but then you have to start learning about soil health, and you have to maintain fencing and irrigation, and then how do you plumb all that irrigation, and how do you apply it, and then how are you taking care of your fertilizer needs and other stuff like that too, and now something broke, you have to figure that out and you have to fix that, and it's a lot of stuff. Most people I talk to, they're doing portion stuff. Most people I talk to have maybe what would be more like a hobby farm where they work a regular job and then they maybe are raising the animal, and then they usually sub it out. Someone comes out and harvests the animal or does portions that they're not doing it all. So big thing was being kind of all in and having to work that stuff. But for me, once again, it was taking some experience from 20 years earlier of little things here and there. And so it kind of made it easier because I implemented everything kind of as a whole on my farm. At one point, I had kind of brought all that 20 years experience and said, okay, now I'm going to do this here too. But one of the biggest things I ran into was I was too big to kind of fall into like a home gardener stuff, but yet too small for like the regular large production agriculture. So nobody's going to come out and mow my 2 acres of cross fenced area for my sheep. You know, I would like it to get mowed in the spring or something when it's tall, but nobody will come out and do that. It just falls in between. Or even some of the stuff in the market garden. You know, I have a bunch of rows, a bunch of row crops, but most of the equipment that's like for home gardeners just would take forever. And then the next step up is getting some big equipment, which is way too expensive and it's just too big to fit. So that's been kind of some of my issue there, is falling in between there and then trying to see where can I adjust that a little bit to better meet my needs. And I guess overall my point in life and everything with this is not, I'm not 20 years old trying to start some new business that's going to then support a lifetime. We're kind of trying to be at a plateau where we can primarily support our own needs and with, you know, food and grain and fruit and meat and all the things we need ourselves do. And so it falls into place where it's still very helpful for me too, because that same crop that I can sell to restaurants and get prime dollar, I could also sell at the farm stand, and then I can also eat it myself, or I could also feed it to animals. So that's helpful for me because I found ways to utilize stuff in different areas instead of just one area.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Aaron, what has been your biggest challenges getting started in your business?
Finance. That's probably the number one biggest thing. And the second, and it kind of goes along with it, is manufacturing. I'm trying to get products made. And to buy the equipment to make it is really expensive. Places don't really want to do small quantity prototype runs, so it's hard to get that made. So it's kind of like what he was talking about with the size of farm equipment. It's the same deal. And then time is the other one. We have a lot going on, try to get it done. Kind of along the lines of manufacturing, this will probably translate more if you have a farm. Be trying to get repair parts to your machinery. That's probably really annoying. I've heard it's really terrible with John Deere, but I don't have any good stuff. So, yeah. And then as far as getting a farm, it seems like all the land here has been bought already, right? So that's kind of a big challenge as well.
Well, thank you. So one more question, and then we'll open up to everybody with their questions for you. So Joe, what recommendations do you have for other veterans entering the ag business?
So, you know, with Agribility, I counsel veterans a lot on beginning farmer. I would say, you know, start out with like the boots to business farmer rancher, which kind of helps you kind of set a plan or get your mind in the framework for a plan. And then really, I think to start, you got to get a plan, you know, started at the beginning and make sure that you start early enough. You don't want to buy land and buy 10 acres and then decide you want to get bison that need hundreds of acres. You know, you want to have a plan before you try to get after resources. Some people will go, hey, I got this opportunity for 100 acres. I'll spend money on 100 acres and maybe only need 10. So, you know, really write that plan and write it early and then look at 5 years out. And when you look 5 years out, look at what resourcing you're going to need every year between tractors and other stuff. And then go out to, you know, people that provide that resourcing like USDA or NRCS. You know, if you're not going to get a high tunnel the first year, but maybe a high tunnel from the NRCS EQIP program is in the second or the third or the fourth year. So really that plan sets everything. And without a good plan, you plan to fail.
Thank you, Joe. Rob, your turn. What recommendations do you have for other veterans entering the ag business?
Just send it. It's good. But if you see a truck with a sticker on the back window that says "Just send it," that's me. No, I agree with Joe. Like you've really got to plan things out. Like you've got to avoid the paralysis by analysis. Like you've got to get a fairly solid plan, but plan the stuff to fail. Like it's not gonna work out exactly the way you want. But planning is key, and look at a 1, 3, and 5 year plan as a minimum. Like where do you want to be, and then come set that goal, and then come back and work the steps to get there. You know, it's the old you eat an elephant a bite at a time. And if you haven't planned out a lot of that, you are highly likely to fail. Like farming is a big gamble, like I was saying earlier. Like there's some educated risk that you've got to take, and then start building a network within your local community as well, because there's a lot of other people that are doing similar or been there, trying to find mentors along the way. You'll find people if you start trying to find networks. So, for example, I'm in the Kenyon County Agribusiness Committee. And was able to find some good contacts there to get some advice. So part of that was finding little bits of land to start leasing to sort of get some production happening. So then we had multiple streams of income to be able to go buy that slightly bigger bit of land and be able to get our foot in the door. So like almost anything, your network is your net worth. So along with the plan, try and build a network of peers, like-minded people. And hopefully you find a community that's similar to here, where most people actually want to help you out, you know, don't necessarily see you as direct competition, and everyone kind of wants to do their own little thing anyway. And yeah, try and find a community that'll rally around you and have that all ships rise together mentality. We all pull together, then we'll all win together.
Okay. Ted?
Yeah, I agree. You know, you're talking about like, you know, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. We had a short-term, midterm, long-term plan. Is 5 year, 5 year, 5 years. So the first 5 years was the short term was to make contacts, get out to a bunch of markets, you know, get accounts, get wholesale accounts, get things going. In the meantime, we're getting things established, getting new gardens set up and getting the orchard in and stuff that would take time. And so right now we're in the midterm area, which is kind of what we consider to be a plateau. So it's kind of maintaining those relationships and working through any other little kinks. And then we'll transition into, you know, hopefully reducing some workload. I can only do this for so long. It's a lot of hard work, very hard work. It's extremely hard work. You know, the only thing harder was the military work. So, but once again, there were some rewarding things. You know, there's some days in the military where we worked, like during Desert Storm, we worked 18 hours a day and we had 2 days off a month. But there was cool times when I got to service Air Force One, or I got to bring the stair trucks up to Vice President Dan Quayle and stuff, things like that. And just like now, it might be a lot of hard work, but I have some of the best meat, fruit, produce, and grains. You can't even buy it at the store anywhere. It is incredibly good and so rewarding because we did every aspect ourselves. And how did we get there? I would say that the biggest thing would be to be willing to learn always, and be open-minded. I guess some people sometimes come out and like, yeah, that's the way to do it. Do no-till gardening or do intensive gardening. On my farm, there are some areas and some times of the year and some other years that we do, you know, the sustainable agriculture, we do regenerative. Sometimes we're doing a hard tilling and stuff. Sometimes we're not tilling. There's different things that apply. Even on 7 acres, we have different little microclimates and different operations going on. So we've got to be open-minded to try different things out and stuff too. And once again, starting with some of these classes and being able to keep learning from there has been helpful. And for me, one of the best things was been farm tours. Mm-hmm. So a lot of classes we did, especially in cultivating success and stuff too, there were a lot of farm tours have been offered and stuff too. And for me, that was the most beneficial. Sometimes we were at big farms where they talk about their small ones, their small gardens are like 20 acres. Oh cow, you know, and they're running it with this giant no drill seed thing, whatever, and then they put cattle out there. I can't do all that stuff. I have little rows. If I put the animals out there during the growing season, I'm gonna have a health department nightmare. You know, and so it's trying to apply it, but I still, sometimes they could have 10 things that they talk about. And if there's one thing that makes something improvement, what I did notice is on their cover cropping is that they were using a blend of stuff, and I was able to improve on some of my cover cropping, which also works as an additional forage for my animals, which means their health and well-being is better, and that's covering some of their food costs. And the meat, we're eating meat too, so it has different benefits. And so farm tours have been really good for me, and some of them I've been to some places that like they have unlimited funds. It's like, how do you even, like, even some little stuff, sometimes it's like it's so hard to make purchases. But even just not too long ago, I was on a farm tour, and I learned what not to do. So I was on a farm tour, and they're GAP certified, which is good agriculture practices. But as we're going through their row crops, they also have their dog out there, and they're in open-toed sandals and stuff. And there was no bathroom there. We had to use the boat dock bathroom, no hand sanitizing station. And I'm just thinking, this is all wrong. So sometimes I go there open-minded to see something, and then like, I need to make sure. So it helps me look at my stuff and reevaluate. So we could try something, and even like my wife and I, even in marriage and stuff, we look at stuff, and I think it's good for us to check things and ask questions and look at stuff and see. Even if something seemed like it was good, we gotta say, well, was it profitable, or did we just enjoy it, or what? You know, what's the benefit, or is there too many challenges? Is there something to work around or something like that too? And we can look at each item and then kind of go from there and see what's going to be helpful. And one way I do that is by being flexible and very modular. So my gardens and stuff are set up, and irrigation, other stuff, where I can kind of change things. So if I have something in one area this year, I can move it to another area, and or if this isn't working good, I can try a different crop or something. And so that's been very helpful. And then the biggest game changer for me right now is I just finished my high tunnel, and so that's going to really be a game changer, because it just allows me a lot more control inside that area. And so if only the government would open back up so I can get my funding. It's such a struggle. You know, you finally get this thing done, and it's like I'm waiting for thousands of dollars, and it's tough. It's tough, but you got to keep your head up, and you got to keep pushing forward. And sometimes it's good, you know, opportunities to be able to share with others. And I think about that even back in the military. You know, when we were deployed, I wasn't deployed by myself. I was deployed by a team. Okay. And it wasn't just my Air Force group. One time I had an injury, and there just happened to be an Army medic there, and I didn't care who. I was just glad that someone was there to help. Right. And so I like to be in that kind of position too. So no matter what kind of position you're in, if you can give someone some help or assistance, I think that's a good place to be.
Thank you, Ted. Aaron, what recommendations do you have for anyone getting into ag?
Networking, especially with people who have a lot more experience than you have, it can help a lot. And there might be things that you haven't thought of that you need help with, like financing or government grants, regulatory compliance, that other people have experience in. That if you don't know any of those, they can really get you in that. The 5 whys, if you've heard of Toil Away or anything, it comes from manufacturing, but it's about chasing down problems and the root causes of issues. Just keep asking why repeatedly until you get the root cause of the issue. So you can analyze that and figure out how to fix the issue. And that applies to anything really, not just manufacturing. And then meet customers. So spend a lot of time with your customers and your ideal customer base to get an idea of what kind of things they want to see and will pay money for, and any issues that they have as well. So if there was something wrong with your product and you just never heard about it, getting out there and talking with your customers can help you find those issues.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. All
I've
right,
got
so
an
I'm gonna.
example of that, Connie. So like for the getting to know your customers, like we've had multiple photographers come out to our farm and give their input on layout and how the sun and time of day and all the artsy stuff that is not in my my wheelhouse at all. But that's something that's helped us with designing our layout for, like that's redoing all our fields this weekend. So I've about 30 hours on a tractor starting tonight. But yeah, that to me has been really helpful because we were close, but we were probably only about 80% there. But those couple of photographers coming out helped us, just it's a couple of degrees difference on the rows of flowers based off what background is going on, and then changing some of the places where we're going to plant certain plants. So they're like, oh, this place we want to see like tall sunflowers, just random stuff that you wouldn't think of, but reaching out to some of our intended customers was able to help us like get that planning just that little bit better. So I'm not turning around and having to disc up a whole field again and just start from scratch next year because we find it out after the fact.
All right, does anyone in the audience have a question? Yeah.
It seems like in agriculture, we define profitability with dollars and cents, but the way you guys talk, I don't really think that's your definition. So I guess it's for anybody who wants to answer. What's your definition of whether or not you're profitable?
But that was for me, that was part of our planning. So in 3 years' time, that needs to at least replace my wife's income. So then she can delve into it more. So if you're not making a profit, then you've got a hobby farm. And if you want to make money, then you got to get pretty serious about the plan. But if you don't love what you do, then it's going to be even harder. So farming is not easy work. So if you don't find a way to love it, but it's one conversation I've had with my wife multiple times. Because I don't want to grow that flower. Like, well, you don't get to make that decision all the time. Like, you've got to listen to your customers. And like, so there's certain things that she's like, that's just annoying. I'm like, does it make money? Is it profitable? And that's why we grow most of our own plants from seedlings. So that's one of my winter projects is turning one of our outbuildings into a full seed growing room, temperature controlled, kind of similar to a hoop house, but you got to make do with what we've got for now. But I think that's where some people get hung up with what you're saying is, are you doing it for the love of it, or are you doing it for profit? Are you likely to spin a profit in 1, 2, 3 years? No, but if you're not working towards that profit, then you're just going to be digging yourself a financial hole you can't get out of. So profitability is an important factor in that planning phase.
For me, we're kind of in a different situation, I suppose. So luckily, we bought our property in 2016. And back then, we offered less than they were in asking, and they took it. So, so for us, and I guess our whatever, just where we're at in life and stuff too, it's not as much that we're tired of seeing the health and well-being, especially of Americans, plummet. When you look at stuff worldwide, it's just outrageous. Just the amount of ultra processed food and stuff, to me, it's a huge profitability for me to have something that I know is non-GMO and it's organically grown or raised, and that's something that's been harvested properly, all those things together, and then know I have it. I've got lambs that I've been there when they're born, we've raised them, and I've harvested them myself, cooked them myself. Most people we know that kind of change from that farm to that hobby farm, they do a portion. They'll maybe raise out an animal, they buy a young grass calf and they raise it out, and then the mobile butcher comes and does it. So they're doing, that's a hobby farm. It's a little different, but we're doing every aspect. I think a lot of that's for our health and well-being, and it's amazing what we provide for ourselves. I don't have cash flow to just go out and go buy a brand new car or something like that, but I've got beef, lamb, chicken, turkey, rabbit, duck, I don't know, whatever, pork, all kinds of stuff that we've all raised and harvested and processed and done everything ourselves. not to mention all kinds of grains and stuff and herbal remedies and stuff that are just things you don't always find. And so, we're rarely sick, we're rarely in the hospital. And so, it's an enjoyable part for us. Uh, don't get me wrong, we're always fighting gophers and we're fighting other things like that and stuff too, but to us, that's huge.
He's- So if I could jump in, I'll just give you a different angle. So I run my farms as nonprofits. So that doesn't mean that I can't make a profit. I don't take any payoff of them though, because I was blessed with a pretty good retirement from the military. But my profit is seeing veterans that get into farming. So I think there's a lot of veterans that get into it, or a percentage of them that get into it, not necessarily to make money, but to find some solace themselves and maybe help out the soldiers that they've served for so long, get into agriculture as well. So I think profit doesn't necessarily have to be monetarily adjudicated, or I would say not even. I like to see veterans get into agriculture, and if they end up that they don't like it, at least they didn't invest a lot in it. So somebody starting out with a couple goats and then finding out that goats aren't for them, is a success as well. So sometimes money's not the point of success in what we do as veteran farmers.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to say that you need money or else you're not gonna be around very long, right? So the tax man's gonna come, right? And then, but like, Rick or Joe was saying, there's, a lot of other benefits you can have after that with the community and those kind of things. Money's the bare minimum, and then you can go above and beyond that, build a good community and be part of that.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or? Yes, sir.
So speaking of money, I guess I would ask, does anybody have any advice or things that they found were like an aha moment as far as the initial capital process, or advice that you might give somebody trying to start and trying to gain traction as far as finding the capital to get the action started?
I can jump in with a little experience with veterans. And so I have a couple veterans that use my property, and I use it for what we used to call in the military POP, or proof of principle. So I have a flower farmer that has like a 50 by 50 square. I think the one gentleman mentioned that he did it in his backyard. If you start small like that and you get what you love and do it small, then you can extrapolate loans. So she can go forward to the FSA and say, hey, I did this in a 50 by 50. Can you help me next year and get me X, Y, or Z more? You don't need to start with 10 acres or 20 acres and try to jump in with hundreds or millions of dollars. You can start small, prove that you can do it, because nobody wants to invest in something that's risky. It's like in the military, we want a lower risk. So do it, prove you can do it, and then find investors, whether it's USDA or FSA or Farm Credit, that will invest with you to grow it bigger. I think that's a pretty solid way to start, as well as I see a lot of successful veteran farmers that use their resources, that use NRCS and an assessment of their grazing, get a grazing plan, or use the EQIP program. There's a lot of programs out there once you start that you can reach out to USDA and get their assistance on. So those are my 2 cents.
For me, I think when he was mentioning too, like working the job to help fund the stuff to get something started, that's one way too, right? For me, it was a little different because I had a previous auto glass business, and what we were doing was we were operating with a plan of intent and purpose. So we were combining some things and saying, okay, well, if we sell this business, can we purchase a tractor? Can we get our stuff started? So for me, that's kind of what my stuff was. So getting started up was fine. Implementing everything just relied on me to do it. I mean, I don't know. I try to hire every neighbor kid. Nobody wants to do anything. It always comes back to me. I don't care what it is. So I have to learn every single thing to do it and stuff too. But once getting it going, and then when I started in 2020 and now till even with farm tours this year and stuff too, I've done a lot of either low cost or no cost things that have been stuff as a benefit. Even this high tunnel I just put up too, I got the full amount of the NRCS grant, which is $8,000. There's a cap in Idaho. I've heard about it before. Sometimes I have to hear things 2 or 3 times. But last year when I went to Arm to Farm 2.0, they actually talked about this high tunnel grant a little bit more, and they either had a higher cap or no cap there, so they were like putting up all kinds of high tunnels. I was like, yeah, let's put a bunch up, and I was going to do aquaponics in one, and all this, yeah. But there's a cap here in Idaho, 8,000. So, but I'm doing a little bit more, so my whole structure is going to be about $12,000. But that's a huge chunk, and so it's an investment on my end. But what's going to happen is some of the other gardens that were harder to take care of will get turned into pasture, and now I'll work something here. So I'm trying to ease my workload into this and stuff too. So once again, being modular, I guess if you need a bunch of funding trying to do everything up front, that might be a lot to deal with. But if you come up with a plan, short-term, mid-term, long-term plan, it might give you a better way to kind of get into these things with a smoother flow and stuff too. So
My business is a little different, but SBA might be something you can look at, Small Business Administration. And then they have SCORE, which is a local business resource that can help you out with general business type things. And yeah, that would probably be the best thing I could say.
One thing I did was go and meet with a few different ag bankers. Most of them have quite a few tools to help you with some of that planning side of things too. They know about a lot of the grants available and different funding mechanisms through like USDA. Many of them will help you with letters saying that you're starting up and you're too high a risk, so you can't get regular lending. Go see the USDA. So, and they've got like good spreadsheets and tools that you can utilize that will go, oh, okay, crap, I didn't think about that, and they'll work through some of those funding mechanisms. Ag West have been great, and Washington Trust Bank were probably the 2 best that I worked with, to just give you a plan. They'll even look up all the commodity prices for you and say, oh, yeah, we're seeing a few of our other clients struggling in this area, others doing well in this area. So it can really kind of help you hash out your plan, and you put some timelines on things, so like we started out small in a subdivision backyard, right? And now we're on 4 acres, and that's our midterm goal, right? But also knowing some of the timelines that you need to prove in yourself, the grants and things like that. Those bankers are super knowledgeable in that space, and good guidance. Treat it like you're interviewing someone, but that's where like expanding that network, like I was saying earlier, you get to know people, find the right subject matter experts that can guide you in making the right decision for you. And then just work, like that's kind of where I was, like we both just had to find ways of making money and having to work through it. And it's like starting up any business, like if you're in an entrepreneurial space at all, if you're working less than 80 hours, then you're leaving time and money on the table. So to get things going, it sucks, but that's what you've got to do to succeed. And I think most of us that have served know what long work hours are like and no time off. So once again, I think that kind of gives veterans getting into farming a bit of an advantage compared to the average person that thinks 40 hours is too much.
Got a question. So just from my perspective at University of Idaho and trying to develop small farms education programs and have them be responsive to the needs, what is, for each of you, maybe a missing puzzle piece education wise, or like what have you really struggled to find answers to you know, I can't promise that we're gonna be able to like, all right, tomorrow we've got that for you. But things that we can be thinking of to better support you where you're coming from, like what's still missing or what would you have liked to have had that would have helped?
I think for me, it's just finding information. Like it's scattered everywhere, and like some places that are doing a pretty good job of it. But like even just knowing where to start, and it's kind of something I've seen with working with multiple educational institutions. Marketing, they might have marketing degrees, but you don't see the actual school's marketing do as great a job as what their students that they're producing can do, which is just kind of funny. But like it's so fragmented. There's all these government plans, there's private donors, there's people trying to lease land, and it's just really fractionalized. And just it's something that I've been working with Connie with for a couple of months now. The Veteran Farmers Coalition is trying to find ways and means of consolidating all that information, but then also letting people know, hey, here's this website, and here's all the information you need to kind of get started. Because that's a missing piece too. There's people doing great work there, consolidating some of that information, but then no one knows to go to find their website. But
We have that same issue, and then they redo our website, and you can't find anything, even when you work there.
yep. And the government websites are even worse. So
I think one of the challenges I would see is taking the farmer all the way to the market and being able to sell. A lot of extension programs maybe around here get really focused on growing, but they don't necessarily get into how do I use social media to advertise? What's the food safety requirements for a farmer's market? Today we're digging into, how do I sell this from a USDA certified perspective? So, but I think some of that takes, I won't say hand holding, but mentorship, one-on-one mentorship, because once you get out of growing it, whether it's eggs or meat or whatever, there's different food safety and different markets for it. So I think any program that takes a farmer from putting a seed into the ground to putting it in the consumer's hand would be very valuable.
I've had really good luck with the classes and stuff I've all gathered here, like I said, between 2020 and now. And a lot of it I've really appreciated. That's why I saw the first the Harvest Heroes program, a veteran thing. I thought that was something cool. Let me try it. And there were some veterans in there doing this, and some of that stuff was a little bit more. It wasn't as much of a production scale like I needed, but once again, it still was an investment. And I remember the very first class, like I already knew stuff. I already had been doing gardens for a long time, but small stuff. But even some stuff like Ariel had, like a worksheet on yield, production. So now I can start applying calculations. Okay, if I'm expecting to get this out of here, how many row feet do I need to grow or something? And so I just think that I wish if I would have gotten those classes beforehand, that would have been good. And Arm to Farm, I forget on the application, I think you had to already be a small farmer or whatever close, but I just wish I would gotten some of those classes earlier. That would have helped me even more. So
I need to sign up for some of those. I've heard about it through my network, but I hadn't seen any marketing or anything. I just haven't had time to squeeze it in my schedule yet.
We have the same problem as how do we get the word out? We do not want to be the best kept secret.
right, and there's a lot of great organizations doing a lot of great things, and it's just a common value point to me that people don't know that they don't know.
Yeah. If they don't have a look for you, you don't know how to find them either. Yeah.
Yeah.
I joke with my wife a lot because she's on her phone and usually playing some kind of game. And I'm like, isn't there something you could be learning? It's like I play tons of stuff. I do a lot of searching, and I don't know, maybe I don't know. Anything I'm interested in, I start trying to find something. And so I would just say I think there's a lot of stuff out there. Be proactive about it, and and, start searching through the sites and look at it as an investment, not something you have to do or something, but, you know, you wanna get the next thing. How do you do it? I don't know. I've had good results with different classes. We've talked about all the stuff starting and growing and food safety and market stuff and things. I've had all that experience here.
I found some good online forums to get some information too, because we were like, oh, because of how many weeds come through all the irrigation here, you know, we're moving to drip system, so we're doing drip for 2 acres, you know, and how can we do that in a cost effective way where I don't have to drill a new well, you know, there's 50 grand for a new well, and then all the equipment on top of that, you know, your filtration systems. So I was talking with manufacturers and suppliers, jumping on different forums and just asking questions, and just don't be afraid to be the idiot in the room. Like it's something that a lot of us do get nervous about, but the dumb question is one you don't ask. So, and yeah, you might have to take a little bit of banter from people that just want to be jerks, but I found most people want to actually help you and understand, hey, you're a newbie and you're gonna ask dumb questions, and that's okay. Yeah, that's kind of a resource I've found to kind of help with that continual learning.
Starting with drip tape would have been good the first couple of years with gated pipe, man, weeds everywhere.
I've
Too much
literally got a Harbor Freight trash pump running our drip irrigation system. So handy having an engineering background to be able to do some of that stuff. Wife just goes, I need this many gallons per minute on these plants. She doesn't know the engineering. I don't know the plants, but together we make this. Yeah.
That's the other power of networking. You can find people that fill in your gaps.
Yeah, we've literally got people coming out over the weekend because they just want to put their hands in the dirt and play, and help rip out some of the flowers. And you know, you can take some cuttings or whatever. They might get a couple of bulbs out of us, you know. But it's free labor. So you know, other than having a bazillion kids, get a network, right?
Yeah. School field trip.
I would throw out a opportunity that, you know, I'm sure Idaho, like Indiana, has a pretty strong farm bureau. I would throw out that Farm Bureau is always a decent connection in your county or district to meet other farmers as well. And, you know, if you stay within the veteran community only, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities with other people that want to help as well. So, you know, reach out to your, like we have Indiana Grown. I see you guys have an Idaho one. Idaho Farm Bureau looks like it's pretty strong. So get out of your comfort zone and kind of look into other farmers that are beyond the veterans. And some farm bureaus actually have beginning farmer opportunities as well.
Good example of a local one that's happening around here is those people over there making wine right now. I know them, Bemidji Wines. They do like harvest volunteers, and you know, someone will get like a bottle of wine or something like that. You know, they put on lunches, you know, just kind of feed the crowd, but they get all volunteers for their harvest. So, you know, because people just, you know, they just want to be able to help, and they find that a little bit of fun. They don't want to go into farming forever, but you know, you give them a t-shirt and lunch, and they go out and that's what Bemidji does. It's like, hey, here's our 2025 harvest shirt. Get their sizes and try and make it a fun experience for them. Feed them and get them a little drunk towards the end of the day. But you know, you've just got to look at those different resources you've got, and that's where I keep coming back to that network. And they just put it out on social media, and people coming around from wine tastings have a sign up sheet, and you put your name and your email address, and they just send it out to everyone. Hey, we're doing harvest this weekend. Whoever can come, let us know your t-shirt size, and they'll have everything ready. You know, so that might be 20% of people on their mailing list, but that's, you know, 15, 20 people that they're not having to pay to come and harvest. You know, like minimum wage for H2A workers this year is like a little over $18.50 an hour. That's what they're getting. So add, like, depending on what farm it is, you got like 30 to 40% on top of that to your employer costs. So it can be some big savings, and just turn it on for a fun event. So you just got to get a little creative and not be afraid to ask for help.
That's a great point, because I also think that there's some people are not going to be able to put everything together financially and plan wise to become a farmer, but there's a lot of jobs in agriculture. You can work on a veteran farm and you can, make $20 an hour. That as a veteran might, bring down your PTSD or give you time to do other things that you want to do. So, when you go into farming, I don't think that necessarily means you have to have a farm and put the seed in the ground yourself. You might be a farm hand and be, completely content to live out the rest of your career